A poor black teenager spent his last $3 to save a lost blind girl. 17-year-old Darius Williams was struggling. This young black man from Chicago's South Side had exactly $3.50 in his pocket, his only way home from work. His sick grandmother was waiting for medicine. His 8-year-old sister needed help with homework. His family depended on every dollar he earned. Then he saw her, a 12-year-old white girl, blind, soaking wet, crying, completely lost in the middle of a dangerous intersection. Hundreds of people walked right past this terrified child. Everyone ignored her except Darius. He didn't think about his own problems, didn't calculate what it would cost him, just saw a scared little girl who needed help. So he spent his last money getting her home safely, walked 3 hours through a storm with no way back. That one selfless choice was about to change everything because that little girl's family was about to thank him in the most incredible way imaginable. What Darius couldn't know was that his ordinary Tuesday was about to become the most important day of his life. Let me tell you about Darius Williams. At 17, this young man was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., while most teenagers were still sleeping, Darius was already up making breakfast. Usually just oatmeal mixed with water. He saved the milk for his 8-year-old sister, Kesha. See, 3 years ago, everything changed for the Williams family. Darius's parents died in a car crash, leaving him and Kesha with their grandmother, Nana Ruth. This 68-year-old woman took them in without hesitation, even though her Social Security barely covered rent on their cramped Southside apartment. Now Darius was the man of the house. Senior at Washington High School by day, stock boy at Murphy's Corner Grocery by night. Every single day, he walked Kesha 12 blocks to elementary school because the city cut their bus route. Budget problems, they said. Then he'd sit in the back of his classes trying to hide the holes in his only school shirt. But here's what really breaks your heart. This kid had a 3.8 GPA. Brilliant mind, especially in math. His teachers kept talking about Northwestern University's engineering program. But every time someone mentioned college applications, Darius would just smile and change the subject. He knew the truth. College was a luxury his family couldn't afford. After school, Darius would rush to his 4-hour shift at the grocery store, stocking shelves, sweeping floors, helping elderly customers carry their bags to the car. Never complained, not once. His manager said he was the most reliable employee they'd ever had. For $45 a day, Darius gave everything he had, but the money never stretched far enough. Their rent was $850 a month. They were currently 5 days late with an eviction notice taped to their door. Nana Ruth had diabetes, and her insulin cost $320 every month. Insurance only covered $180. That left $140 they didn't have. So Nana Ruth was rationing her doses, dangerously stretching each injection to make them last longer. And Kesha, sweet little Kesha, was walking around with holes in her shoes covered by duct tape. She never complained, never asked for anything. She knew her big brother was doing his best, but Darius noticed everything. He saw how she tried to hide her feet under her desk at school, how she'd pretend her stomach wasn't growling when there wasn't enough food. Most nights, Darius did his homework at the kitchen table while Kesha watched their tiny TV. When the electricity got cut, which happened more often than he'd like to admit, he'd study under the street light outside their building. He slept on the living room couch so Kesha could have the bedroom. Privacy was another luxury they couldn't afford. But you know what kept Darius going? Nana Ruth's wisdom. This incredible woman would sit him down and say, "Baby, you do right by folks even when life ain't doing right by you." She'd raised him to believe that kindness wasn't something you turned on and off based on your circumstances. It was who you were deep down in your bones. And Darius lived by that code. During lunch breaks at school, while other kids bought food from the cafeteria, Darius would tutor struggling classmates for free. He'd use his own lunch money to buy Kesha new pencils when hers broke. When elderly neighbors needed help carrying groceries, Darius was always there. No questions asked, no payment expected. This Tuesday started like every other day. Oatmeal breakfast, walk Kesha to school, sit through classes dreaming about engineering projects he'd never get to build, watch his classmates discuss college visits he couldn't afford to take, rush to his grocery shift where he'd spend 4 hours on his feet for exactly $45. But today felt different somehow. The bills were piling higher than usual. Kesha's teacher had called requesting a parent conference. She needed new glasses they couldn't afford. The landlord had called that morning with an ultimatum: pay by Friday or face eviction. And Nana Ruth was down to her last few insulin doses. As Darius counted his paycheck that afternoon, all $45 of it, he did the math in his head like he did every day. Rent, medicine, food, utilities. No matter how he calculated it, they were always coming up short. But he never let it show. Never let the worry creep onto his face where Kesha might see it. The one thing that kept him going was hope. I hope that somehow, someday things will get better. I hope that his hard work will pay off. I hope that being a good person in a tough world actually means something. That Tuesday evening, as he finished his shift and headed for the bus stop, Darius had exactly $3.50 in his pocket, his bus fare home. He was thinking about tomorrow, another day of the same routine, the same struggles, the same impossible choices between his family's needs. He had no idea that in just a few minutes he'd have to make the biggest choice of his life. A choice between his own family's desperate needs and a complete stranger's safety. A choice that would test everything Nana Ruth had taught him about doing right by people. But as Darius walked toward that bus stop, thinking about how to stretch $45 to cover a week's worth of problems, he couldn't have imagined what he was about to witness. What Darius discovered at that intersection would force him to make an impossible choice. The storm hit Chicago like a freight train. One minute it was just cloudy. The next minute the sky opened up and unleashed pure chaos. Wind gusts howling at 45 mph. Rain coming down in sheets so thick you could barely see 10 ft ahead. Thunder cracking like gunshots overhead. Darius was running late. His grocery shift had gone 10 minutes over because a delivery truck showed up right at closing time. Now he was sprinting toward the bus stop knowing he had exactly 8 minutes to catch the last bus home. Missed this one and the next wouldn't come for 2 hours. His $3.50 felt heavy in his pocket. It was exactly enough for bus fare, nothing more. No backup plan, no extra money for a taxi if something went wrong. He was calculating in his head as he ran if he caught this bus, he'd be home by 7. Nana Ruth was waiting for him to pick up her insulin from the pharmacy before it closed. Kesha needed help with her math homework. Another normal evening in the Williams household. But as Darius approached the intersection at State and Madison, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A crowd of people was rushing past something or someone in the middle of the chaos. Business suits and umbrellas. Everyone with their heads down, focused only on getting out of the storm. But there, standing perfectly still in the center of all that movement, was a tiny figure. A little girl, maybe 12 years old, completely soaked, holding a white cane in her small hands. She was blind and she was terrified. Emma Whitmore had been having the worst day of her life. Her regular driver, Mr. Johnson, had suffered a heart attack right after picking her up from Whitmore Academy. The ambulance had rushed him to the hospital, and in all the confusion, the backup driver couldn't find her in the storm. Her phone had died after calling for help repeatedly. She'd never been alone in public without assistance. Never. Now she stood frozen at the busiest intersection in Chicago, completely disoriented by the chaos around her. The rain was amplifying every sound: car horns, shouting, footsteps splashing through puddles. She couldn't tell which direction was safe. Couldn't follow the crowd sounds because they were coming from everywhere. And every single person was walking right past her. Darius watched in horror as hundreds of adults streamed around this child like water around a rock. Some bumped into her and kept going. Others saw her but looked away, too focused on their own problems to stop. A few even seemed annoyed that she was blocking their path. But it got worse. Much worse. A delivery truck was hydroplaning toward the intersection. The driver couldn't see through the rain and steam on his windshield. The traffic lights were malfunctioning due to power surges, blinking yellow instead of giving clear signals. Cars were sliding on the wet pavement, drivers panicking as visibility dropped to almost zero, and Emma stepped forward. She was following the sound of footsteps, trying to figure out where the crowd was going, but she stepped right into the crosswalk just as the truck bore down on the intersection. The driver laid on his horn, trying to brake, but the truck was sliding on the wet asphalt. Darius saw it all happening in slow motion. This 12-year-old girl, soaked and shivering, about to walk directly into traffic. A massive truck unable to stop in time. Hundreds of people who could help, but none of them moved. His mind raced through the calculations. If he helped her, he'd miss his bus. That meant walking 3 hours home through this dangerous storm, getting soaked, possibly getting sick, definitely getting home too late to help Nana Ruth or Kesha. His family needed him. They depended on every dollar he earned, every minute he was there for them. But then he looked at Emma's face. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the rainwater. Her small hands gripping that white cane so tightly her knuckles were white. She looked exactly like Kesha might look if she were lost and scared and alone. And in that moment, Darius realized he didn't have a choice at all. He thought about Nana Ruth's words, "You do right by folks even when life ain't doing right by you." He thought about what kind of man he wanted to be, what kind of example he wanted to set for Kesha. What kind of person could walk away from a terrified child just to save himself some inconvenience? The truck was 20 ft away and closing fast. Emma took another step into the street. People were screaming now, but nobody was moving. Nobody except Darius. He dropped his grocery bag and ran straight into traffic. "Hey," he shouted, grabbing Emma's shoulders gently but firmly, pulling her back toward the sidewalk just as the truck rushed past, horn blaring, spraying them both with street water. Emma crashed into his chest, sobbing with relief and terror. The crowd that had ignored her for the past 10 minutes suddenly stopped to stare, some pulling out phones to record what had just happened. But Darius wasn't thinking about the crowd. He was looking down at this small, scared child clinging to his arm, and he knew his evening had just taken a very different turn. His bus was pulling away from the stop. His last $3.50 was about to become a very important decision. What happened during that long bus ride would reveal just how much Darius was willing to sacrifice for a child he'd never met. "Hey, sweetie, you're safe now," Darius said gently, kneeling down to Emma's height as she trembled against him. Her designer school uniform was completely soaked, her small body shaking from cold and fear. Without thinking, he pulled off his thin jacket, his only protection against the storm, and wrapped it around her shoulders. "I couldn't hear where to go," Emma whispered through her tears. "Everything sounded scary and I didn't know which way was safe." Darius's heart broke. She was just a little kid, completely helpless in this chaos. He guided her carefully away from the traffic to a covered bus stop, his protective instincts in full gear. Kesha had taught him how to talk to scared children. "I'm Darius," he said softly. "What's your name?" "Emma Whitmore," she whispered, still gripping his arm tightly. "Where do you live, Emma?" With shaking hands, she showed him her school ID, Whitmore Academy. The address made Darius's stomach drop. Lincoln Park. That was at least 45 minutes away by bus, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in Chicago. He'd never even been to that part of the city. But here's where Darius faced his moment of truth. He counted the money in his pocket one more time. Exactly $3.50. Bus fare to Lincoln Park would cost $1.75 each way. That was $3.50 total, every penny he had, which meant no money for his own trip home. He looked at Emma, then at his watch, then at the storm raging around them. If he helped her, he'd be stranded downtown with no way home except walking. 3 hours minimum through dangerous neighborhoods in a storm that was getting worse by the minute. His phone buzzed. A text from Nana Ruth. "Baby, be safe in this storm. Pick up my insulin on your way home." Darius stared at that message. His grandmother needed her medicine. Kesha was waiting for help with homework. His family depended on him being there, being reliable, being the man of the house. But then he looked at Emma again. "I am 12 years old, blind, scared, alone in a storm with strangers who had already proven they wouldn't help. What kind of person would he be if he walked away now?" "Come on," he said, making his decision. "Let's get you home." The bus arrived just as they reached the stop. The driver looked skeptical about letting two soaking wet passengers board, but when Darius explained the situation, the man's expression softened. "That little girl shouldn't be out in this weather," the driver said, waving them on. "Go ahead, son." Darius paid both their fares $3.50, every dollar he had to his name. As the bus pulled away from the curb, he watched his backup plan disappear with it. No money for a taxi, no money for a return bus ticket, just a long, cold walk ahead of him. But then Emma settled into the seat beside him, finally starting to relax as warmth returned to the bus, and Darius knew he'd made the right choice. "Why are you helping me?" Emma asked as they rode through the storm. It was such an innocent question, the kind only a child would ask. "Because you needed help and I could help," Darius said simply. It really was that basic to him. As they rode, Emma began to open up. She told him about Whitmore Academy, her private school, where she was one of only 3 blind students. She talked about her parents, their big house, the tutors and drivers who usually managed every aspect of her life. "But sometimes I feel really alone," she admitted quietly. "Most people treat me differently because I can't see, or they act weird around me because my family has money." Darius found himself talking about Kesha, how bright she was, how she always asked a million questions about everything. Emma laughed for the first time that day when he described Kesha's latest obsession with becoming an astronaut. "Do you have a car?" Emma asked innocently. "No, we take buses everywhere." "Do you live in a big house like mine? A small apartment with my grandma and little sister. What does your dad do?" Darius paused. "He died when I was 14. Car accident." Emma went quiet after that, and Darius could practically see her young mind processing the reality of his life. Here she was complaining about feeling lonely in her mansion, talking to someone who'd lost everything and was still finding ways to help others. As they rode deeper into Lincoln Park, the neighborhoods transformed around them. Small apartments gave way to larger homes, then to actual mansions with iron gates and manicured lawns. Darius had only seen places like this in movies. "It's the big house with the tall iron gates," Emma said as they approached her stop. She was navigating confidently now, clearly knowing her own neighborhood despite her blindness. When they stepped off the bus, Darius got his first real look at Emma's world. The mansion beyond those gates was easily worth millions. Security cameras, a circular driveway with a fountain, professional landscaping that probably cost more than his family's annual rent. For a moment he felt awkward about his wet, cheap clothes, his worn-out shoes held together with duct tape. But Emma squeezed his hand. "Thank you for saving me," she said with complete sincerity. "You're the first person who just helped without asking a bunch of questions or treating me like I'm made of glass." As they walked toward the security gate, Darius realized the full scope of what he'd committed to. It was 6:30 p.m. and it was getting dark fast. The storm was still raging thunder, lightning, streets flooding. His return trip home would be at least 3 hours on foot through some of the roughest neighborhoods in Chicago. He thought about Nana Ruth checking the clock, getting worried when he didn't show up. About Kesha sitting at the kitchen table with her math homework, waiting for her big brother to help her like he did every night. About the insulin sitting at the pharmacy that wouldn't get picked up tonight. But then he looked at Emma's relieved smile as she recognized the familiar gates of her home, and he felt that warm certainty in his chest that told him he'd done the right thing. Sometimes being a good person costs you everything you have, but it's still worth it. As those massive gates opened and caught a glimpse of the world Emma lived in, a world of luxury and security he could barely imagine, he prepared himself for the long, cold walk home. He had no idea that Emma was already planning to change his life forever. What Emma offered next would plant the seed for the most incredible turn of events. As they approached the massive iron gates, a security guard emerged from the gate house, relief flooding his face the moment he saw Emma. "Miss Emma, thank God you're safe," he called out. "Your parents have been calling everyone, the school, the police, the hospital." Emma quickly explained what happened, how her driver had a heart attack, how she got lost in the storm, how saved her from the truck and brought her home safely. The guard looked at with new respect, clearly understanding the sacrifice this young man had made. The gates opened with a soft electronic hum, revealing a circular driveway like something from a movie. A fountain, perfectly manicured lawns, and a mansion lit up like a palace against the dark sky. But Emma reached into her expensive school bag and pulled out a thick leather wallet stuffed with cash. "Please take this," she said, offering what looked like $200 or $300. "You spent your bus money and you'll need a taxi home in this storm." Stepped back, raising his hands. "I didn't help you for money, Emma, but you sacrificed for me," she insisted, confused. Clearly, she wasn't used to people refusing her family's money. "You're going to get soaked walking home." "I helped because it was right," said gently. "That's what we do for each other." Emma studied his face with wisdom beyond her 12 years. "You're different from most people I meet." From her wallet, she pulled out an elegant business card, heavy cardstock with an embossed logo. She carefully wrote her phone number on the back. Emma read. The address listed Academy. Then Emma did something surprising. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small silver keychain, simple but clearly expensive with intricate engraving. "This belonged to my grandfather," she said, pressing it into palm. "He always said kindness should be remembered." "Emma, I can't take your grandfather's, please," she interrupted. "Maybe someday you'll understand why it matters." Voices called from the mansion. "Emma, Emma." Two figures ran down the driveway with umbrellas, frantic parents who'd been searching everywhere. "I need to go," Emma said, "but I'll never forget what you did today." "Will you be okay getting home?" she asked with genuine concern. "I'll be fine," assured her. "You just stay safe and warm," Emma said, her voice carrying impossible weight for someone so young. "What you did today meant everything. Anyone would have done the same thing." Emma shook her head. "No, they wouldn't have. I know that better than anyone." Her parents reached them, a well-dressed couple in expensive coats. The woman immediately pulled Emma into a fierce hug while the man studied with curiosity. "This young man saved our daughter," Emma explained quickly. The mother started reaching for her purse but politely declined before she could offer. The father studied face carefully. "What's your name, son?" "Williams, sir. Just glad Emma's safe." As the family headed toward their mansion, the gates began to close. Found himself alone on the street in Chicago's most expensive neighborhood, storms still raging. He examined the business card and keychain under a street light. The keychain had small engraving. "Foundation established. 1952. It didn't mean anything to him, but something about its weight felt important. His phone buzzed. Another text from Nana Ruth. "Where are you, baby?" Getting worried, looked at the long road ahead. No money for a bus or taxi. At least 3 hours walking through the storm, through neighborhoods that got rougher the closer he got to home. He was already soaked to the bone. But as he started walking, putting one foot in front of the other, he felt good about his choice. Even facing the consequences, even knowing how worried his family would be, he knew he'd done the right thing. He put the business card and keychain in his pocket, focused on getting home. The keychain felt heavier than it should, like it carried some kind of significance he didn't understand yet. 3 hours later, he'd arrive home exhausted and soaked, but with no regrets. Emma was safe. That's all that mattered. He had no idea that Emma was already upstairs making phone calls that would change everything. While struggled through the storm, Emma was setting in motion events that would shock everyone. The moment Emma walked through her mansion's front door, soaking wet but safe, her parents rushed to embrace her. After the initial relief, after warm towels and dry clothes, Emma had only one thing on her mind. "Dad, I need to tell you about the boy who saved me," she said, sitting in her father's study. Richard, CEO of Industries and chairman of the family foundation, listened intently as Emma described every detail, how risked his safety to pull her from traffic, how he spent his last money to get her home, how he refused payment and was now walking hours through the storm. "He didn't help because he had to, Dad," Emma said passionately. "He chose to. Most people walked right past me. He saw a scared kid and risked everything." Richard exchanged a meaningful look with his wife. "A character like that is extraordinary, especially at his age. We should do something significant to thank him," said. But Emma was thinking bigger. "Dad, remember what Grandpa always said about the foundation, about finding people who prove goodness still exists." Richard's eyes lit up with understanding. The foundation had been established by his father in 1952 after a stranger helped their family during the Depression. For 70 years, they'd quietly identified and supported individuals who demonstrated exceptional character. Within an hour, Richard was making phone calls. "I need a complete background check on Williams," he told his private investigator. "Character references, academic records, family situation, everything." Meanwhile, was trudging through the storm, completely unaware his life was about to change. The 3-hour walk home was brutal. Rain soaking through his clothes, wind cutting like ice, streets flooding around his worn shoes. He stumbled through his apartment door at PM 3 and 2 hours late. Nana Ruth was packing, was crying, both terrified something had happened. "Baby, what happened?" "You're soaking wet," Nana Ruth cried. "Helped a lost kid get home safely," said simply, not wanting to worry them. He didn't mention Emma's wealth or his sacrifice. Nana hugged him tight. "You did right, baby. Good things come to good people." Over the next few days, strange things happened. His grocery store manager mentioned someone called asking about character. His school counselor suddenly wanted to discuss college plans. A neighbor said someone had been asking about the Williams family. Was puzzled, but didn't connect these events to Emma. He kept her business card and keychain on his bedside table, occasionally wondering about the foundation engraving. Then Friday afternoon, everything would become crystal clear. By then, the family had spent 3 days preparing to change his life forever. What discovered Friday afternoon would rewrite everything he thought he knew about his future. Friday after school was stocking shelves at Murphy's Corner Grocery, same as always. His mind was on the usual worries. Rent still overdue. Nana Ruth's insulin running low. Needing new shoes. Just another day in the endless cycle of making ends meet. Then his manager approached with a puzzled expression. "Someone's here to see you," he said. "Well-dressed man with a little girl, says it's important. Expected maybe a customer he'd helped or possibly someone from school." What he didn't expect was to see Emma standing beside a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. "Hello," the man said, extending his hand. "I'm Richard, Emma's father." Felt his stomach flip. Had he done something wrong? Was Emma's family upset about something that happened Tuesday? "Is everything okay?" asked nervously. "Is Emma all right?" Emma beamed at him. "I'm perfect, thanks to you. I told my dad everything about Tuesday." Richard's expression was warm but serious. "We need to talk, son. Is there somewhere private we can speak?" The manager offered him a small. As they settled into the cramped space surrounded by boxes and scheduling charts, felt completely out of place. These people belonged in boardrooms, not grocery store break rooms. "Did I do something wrong?" Darius asked again. "Quite the opposite," Richard said. "Emma told us about your sacrifice Tuesday night, how you spent your last money to get her home safely, how you walked 3 hours through a storm." Emma reached for Darius's hand. "I told him you wouldn't take our money, how you said you helped because it was right." Richard leaned forward. "Darius, I need to tell you who we are. I run the Whitmore Foundation, established by my father 70 years ago." He pulled out a tablet showing Darius the foundation website. Photos of successful graduates, stories of transformation, a legacy spanning decades. "We've spent 7 decades identifying and supporting exceptional character," Richard continued. "We believe good people deserve good opportunities." Darius stared at the screen, seeing doctors, teachers, engineers, community leaders, all foundation scholarship recipients. "I don't understand why you're telling me this." "Because," Emma said with excitement she could barely contain, "we spent 3 days learning everything about you." Richard opened a thick file folder. Academic records from Washington High, teacher recommendations, community references, employment history from this store. Darius felt exposed, vulnerable. "You investigated me. Every single person we spoke to praised your integrity," Richard said. "Your manager here says you're the most reliable employee he's ever had. Teachers describe you as brilliant but humble. Neighbors talk about how you help elderly residents, walk children to school, and never complain despite obvious hardships." The file seemed impossibly thick. 3.8 GPA while working part-time and caring for family. Richard read, "The math teacher says you're gifted but can't afford college prep courses, tutoring classmates for free during lunch breaks. Perfect attendance despite financial hardships." Emma couldn't stay quiet any longer. "Darius, What you did Tuesday wasn't random. It was a character in action. I still don't understand, Darius said, though his heart was starting to race with possibility. Richard's voice grew emotional. My grandfather started this foundation after someone helped our family during the Great Depression, a stranger who saw people in need and chose to help. Even though he had his own struggles, he believed character should be rewarded with opportunity. Richard continued, "We've funded over 300 students through college and graduate school, but Emma specifically requested to be involved in finding our next scholarship recipient." Emma spoke up, her young voice carrying surprising weight. "I wanted to help identify someone who understood struggle but maintained compassion, someone who would help others even when it cost them everything." The pieces were clicking together in Darius's mind, but it seemed too impossible to believe. "Darius," Richard said, his voice gentle but firm, "we want to offer you the Whitmore Foundation Full Merit Scholarship." The words hit Darius like lightning. He sat in stunned silence, unable to process what he was hearing. "This isn't just tuition," Richard continued, pulling out official documents. "It's a complete life-changing opportunity. Full ride to any university plus family support during your studies." Emma was practically bouncing with excitement. "Northwestern University's engineering program is expecting your application. They want you, Darius." "But why?" Darius whispered, his voice barely audible. "People like me don't get opportunities like this. People exactly like you are who we look for," Richard said firmly. "Your kindness Tuesday wasn't an accident. It was who you are deep down in your character." Emma leaned forward. "Most people see my family's money first, me second. You saw me as just Emma, a scared kid who needed help. That's how I knew you were special." Richard opened the scholarship packet. "Full tuition, room and board, books, supplies, monthly stipend for your family while you're in school, medical coverage for your grandmother's diabetes, educational support for Kesha through high school." Darius felt tears welling up in his eyes. "This can't be real." "It's real," Emma said softly. "Your life just changed completely. All because you chose to help a scared little girl in the rain. Character matters," Darius, Richard added, "and yours is exceptional." As Darius stared at the scholarship documents with shaking hands, one thought kept running through his mind. Tuesday's storm hadn't just brought rain, it had brought a miracle. Everything was about to change. His family struggles, his impossible dreams of college, his entire future, all transformed because he'd made one choice to put someone else's safety before his own convenience. The best part, this was just the beginning. When Darius brought his family to the Whitmore Foundation the next morning, what they discovered would exceed even their most impossible dreams. Saturday morning, 900 a.m. sharp. Darius stood outside the Whitmore Foundation headquarters with Nana Ruth and Kesha, all wearing their best clothes, which still looked worn and humble compared to the marble and glass building towering above them. "Is this really happening, baby?" Nana whispered, squeezing Darius's hand. At 68, she'd seen enough disappointment to be cautious about hope. Before Darius could answer, Emma burst through the front doors, her face glowing with excitement. She ran straight to Darius and hugged him like he was family. "Welcome to your new beginning," she said, then knelt down to Kesha's level. "You must be the sister he talks about. I'm Emma." Kesha stared wide-eyed at the massive building. "Is this where rich people live?" Emma laughed. "No, sweetie. This is where we help good people achieve their dreams." Inside, the lobby took their breath away. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and most impressive of all, a wall covered with hundreds of photographs. Scholarship recipients over 70 years. Doctors, teachers, engineers, business leaders, all smiling in graduation caps. "Someday Darius's picture will be up there," Emma said proudly. They were led to a conference room overlooking Chicago's skyline. Richard and Catherine Whitmore were waiting with several foundation board members, all smiling warmly at the Williams family. "Please sit," Richard said, gesturing to leather chairs around a polished table. "We have some life-changing news to share." Catherine handed them each a thick folder with the Darius Williams Full Merit Scholarship embossed in gold letters. "Let's start with your education, Darius." Richard began. "Full tuition to Northwestern University's engineering program. Room and board on campus all 4 years. Books, supplies, laptop, everything you need for success." Nana Ruth's hand flew to her mouth. Full tuition. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars. $240,000 over 4 years, Richard confirmed. Plus guaranteed funding for graduate school if you choose to continue. But Emma couldn't contain herself. Tell them about the family support. Richard smiled at her enthusiasm. While Darius is in school, we'll provide a monthly stipend of $2,000 for his family. That's $96,000 over 4 years to ensure you never have to choose between education and family needs. Kesha tugged on Nana Ruth's sleeve. What's a stipend? It means, Nana Ruth said through tears. We can pay rent and buy groceries without worry. Catherine leaned forward. Mrs. Williams, we understand you have diabetes. Our medical program will provide comprehensive health care coverage for your entire family. No more rationing insulin. No more choosing between medicine and other necessities. Nana Ruth started crying openly. After 3 years of stretching medications, sacrificing her health for her grandchildren's needs, the relief was overwhelming. There's more, Richard continued. We've arranged for you to move to a 3-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. The foundation will cover rent for the next 5 years. My own room, Kesha asked in wonder. Your own room, Emma confirmed, with a desk for homework and bookshelves for all your future books. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Kesha, Richard said, turning to the 8-year-old, we're establishing an education fund in your name. Tutoring, enrichment programs, summer camps, everything you need to prepare for your own college journey. Kesha looked at Darius. Does this mean I can be an astronaut? You can be anything you want, Darius said, his voice thick with emotion. Richard opened another folder. Darius, Northwestern's admissions director, is here today to personally welcome you. A distinguished woman entered the room. Mr. Williams, I'm Dr. Sarah Carter, director of admissions. Our engineering department has been following your story. We don't just want you at Northwestern. We need students with your character and determination. She handed him another packet. Summer Bridge program starting in June. We'll make sure you're completely prepared for college-level coursework. Academic advisor assigned specifically to first-generation college students. Peer mentoring program. Whatever support you need. Emma could barely sit still. Tell him about the internships. Dr. Carter smiled. Guaranteed summer internships with top engineering firms. These aren't just educational experiences. They are pathways to career opportunities. Companies specifically request our foundation scholars because they know the caliber of person we support. Darius felt overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you. By succeeding, Richard said simply, by becoming the engineer you're meant to be. By helping others when you have the opportunity. Catherine handed Nana Ruth a set of keys. Your new apartment is ready. We took the liberty of furnishing it with everything you need. Moving is scheduled for next weekend. Nana Ruth held the keys like they were made of gold. 38 years I've been praying for a miracle for these children. 38 years. Emma walked over to Darius and placed a gold keychain in his palm, matching the silver one from Tuesday but engraved with Northwestern Engineering 2025. One keychain for remembering where you came from, she said. One for celebrating where you're going. As the morning progressed, they toured Northwestern's campus. Darius met professors, saw the laboratories where he'd study, visited the dorm room that would be his home. Everything felt like a dream. But the most powerful moment came when they returned to the foundation building. Richard led them to the wall of photographs. 70 years of students just like you, Darius. Young people who showed exceptional character and were given exceptional opportunities. Each one has gone on to change lives, build communities, and make the world better. He pointed to an empty space on the wall. This is where your graduation photo will hang next to all the others who proved that character and opportunity can change everything. As they left the foundation that day, their lives completely transformed. Nana Ruth pulled Darius aside. Baby, your mama and daddy would be so proud. You saved that little girl Tuesday and she saved our whole family. Looking back at the foundation building, knowing everything was about to change, Darius realized the truth. Kindness really does come back to you, sometimes in ways you never could have imagined. What happened next proved that one teenager's choice to help a lost child could transform an entire city. Within 48 hours of the scholarship announcement, Darius's story exploded across social media. The security footage from Tuesday showing him running into traffic to save Emma went viral with over 10 million views. The caption read, "Poor teenager spends $3.50 to save blind girl. What happens next will restore your faith in humanity." Local Chicago news picked up the story first. Then national morning shows started calling. Soon Darius found himself on camera, still wearing his Murphy's Corner grocery uniform, trying to explain that he'd just done what anyone should do. "I wasn't thinking about the reward," he told the interviewer. "I just saw a scared little girl who needed help." But the most powerful part of every interview was watching Nana Ruth beam with pride in the background and seeing little Kesha's excitement about her own bright future. The transformation began immediately. Before, Darius wore the same torn shirt to school every day, sat in the back to hide his circumstances, and never participated in discussions about college. After Northwestern University sweatshirt, confident posture, hand raised in every class. His guidance counselor said the change was remarkable, like watching someone finally believe in their own potential. Before, the Williams family cramped into a one-bedroom apartment, electricity sometimes cut off, Nana Ruth rationing insulin dangerously. After, spacious three-bedroom apartment with Kesha's art projects covering the refrigerator, Nana Ruth's diabetes perfectly managed genuine laughter-filling rooms that were no longer dominated by worry. The ripple effects spread far beyond one family. Washington High School established the Darius Williams Character Award for students who demonstrated kindness without recognition. The first recipient was Maria Santos, who quietly tutored struggling classmates during lunch every day. Murphy's Corner grocery became a neighborhood landmark. Customers came specifically to shop at the store where the hero worked. The owner, inspired by Darius's example, started an employee education fund. 3 other workers received vocational training scholarships within 6 months. But the most remarkable change was happening at Northwestern University. Darius thrived in the summer prep program, finishing in the top 10% of participants. His engineering professor, Dr. Patricia Lau, said she'd never seen a freshman with such natural leadership qualities. "Darius has this rare combination of intellectual curiosity and genuine concern for others," she explained. "He's already talking about designing accessible infrastructure for people with disabilities." By his first semester, Darius was tutoring other students, leading study groups, and volunteering at Chicago schools to talk about the power of character and education. Emma, meanwhile, had found her own purpose. At 12 years old, she became the youngest advisor to the Whitmore Foundation's scholarship committee. Her insights about identifying genuine kindness proved invaluable. "Adults sometimes fake being nice," she told the foundation board, "but kids can always tell who's really good." The foundation expanded because of Emma and Darius's story. Donations tripled as people read about the scholarship program. 5 additional cities requested Whitmore Foundation partnerships. The Choose Kindness Scholarship Program was born, specifically seeking students who helped others without expectation of reward. 6 months after that rainy Tuesday, the transformation was undeniable. Property values in Darius's old neighborhood stabilized as more families decided to stay rather than move away. Local businesses thrived as the community became more connected and hopeful. The grocery store where Darius worked became a community gathering place. Customers shared stories of kindness they'd witnessed or performed. A bulletin board displayed photos and notes about good deeds throughout the neighborhood. Most powerfully, crime rates dropped 25% in the surrounding area. Police attributed the change to increased community engagement and hope for the future. The story inspired a documentary called Character Matters following Darius's first year at Northwestern. Film festivals across the country requested screenings. Schools used it to teach students about the importance of integrity and compassion. But perhaps the most touching moment came during Darius's first semester finals. He'd earned a 3.9 GPA, made Dean's List, and been selected for a prestigious summer research program. Emma visited campus to see how he was doing. As they walked across Northwestern's beautiful campus, she asked him the same question from that first bus ride. "Do you ever wonder why this all happened?" Darius thought for a moment, watching students hurry between classes, remembering his own impossible dreams just months earlier. "I think it happened because good people were watching," he said. "Nana Ruth always said, character is what you do when nobody's looking. But maybe somebody's always looking. Maybe kindness just finds a way to multiply." Emma smiled that wise smile that seemed too old for her years. Maybe that's exactly how it's supposed to work. As they stood there, two young people whose lives had been changed by one moment of choosing right over easy. Other students passed by completely unaware they were walking past a living reminder that extraordinary things happen to ordinary people who make extraordinary choices. The ripple effects were just beginning. As the first anniversary approached, Emma had planned one final surprise that would bring everything full circle. Exactly 1 year later, same intersection at State and Madison, same time of day, but instead of storm clouds, bright sunshine streamed down on a small crowd gathered where it all began. Darius arrived from Northwestern for the weekend, wearing his engineering program jacket with the confidence of someone who'd found his purpose. Nana Ruth stood beside him, healthier than she'd been in years. Kesha bounced excitedly, having just won her school's science fair. Emma waited with her parents and city officials, barely able to contain her excitement about the surprise she'd been planning for months. A year ago, she announced to the gathered crowd, "This corner changed 2 lives, but kindness doesn't just change the people directly involved. It changes everyone who witnesses it." Chicago's mayor stepped forward with an official proclamation. This intersection is permanently renamed Choose Kindness Corner. They unveiled a beautiful memorial bench with an engraved plaque. "Kindness creates kindness. Character builds community. Love multiplies love. In honor of every person who chooses to help when others walk away." Darius stared at the dedication, overwhelmed. "A year ago, I just saw a scared little girl who needed help. And now," Emma said, "thousands of people see this corner and remember that one moment of courage can change everything." But the most perfect moment was yet to come. As the ceremony concluded, an elderly man stumbled on the sidewalk nearby. Without hesitation, a young girl from the crowd immediately helped him up, checking if he was okay. Emma and Darius exchanged knowing looks. The cycle was continuing naturally. The girl had no idea that Foundation representatives were watching, that her spontaneous kindness was being noted. She just saw someone who needed help and acted. "That's how it works," Emma whispered to Darius. "Kindness inspires kindness." Later, as the crowd dispersed, the Williams family stood together at their memorial bench. Nana Ruth read the plaque aloud slowly, her voice filled with pride. "Your mama and daddy would be so proud, baby," she told Darius. "You didn't just save Emma that day. You saved all of us." Kesha tugged on Darius's sleeve. "When I grow up, I want to help people like you do." "You already do, Kesha," he said. "You just have to keep choosing to see people who need help." As they walked away from Choose Kindness Corner, Darius pulled out both keychains. The silver one from that rainy Tuesday and the gold one representing his bright future. He'd carry both forever. Reminders that the smallest acts of courage create the biggest changes. The corner behind them would inspire countless acts of kindness for generations to come. But the most important truth was simpler. Good people really do change the world, one choice at a time. Darius and Emma's story reminds us that we all encounter Choose Kindness corners every single day. Moments when we can step up or step away. Maybe it's the lost child, the struggling elderly person, the overwhelmed parent, or the lonely classmate sitting by themselves. The beautiful truth is you never know who you're helping. You never know what miracles your compassion might unlock. But more importantly, it shouldn't matter. Like Darius, the reward isn't the point. Humanity is today. Look for your Choose Kindness corner. Help someone who cannot help you back. Be the person who stops when others keep walking. Because somewhere a scared child is hopping, that heroes still exist and they're waiting for you to prove them right. What's your act of kindness going to be? Tell us in the comments about a time someone helped you or when you helped someone else. Hit that like button if this story moved you. Subscribe for more proof that ordinary people create extraordinary change through simple acts of love. The story you heard today wasn't cleaned up. It was told exactly as it happened. At True Life Stories, we believe that's the only way truth can live. If you felt something, hit like, comment, and your reaction and subscribe. Every week, we bring you voices that refuse to be silent.